Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 202 of the J Situation Podcast. I'm recording this on March 12th, 2024. How are all you wonderful folks doing? And I hope you're doing well. I am doing very well. Yeah, daylight savings time is awesome. No, frankly, it should stay like this permanently. I don't know why we don't do that, but there's more time in the evening to shoot without auxiliary devices. More time to enjoy the daylight. We saved it. No, thanks for tuning in today. I do appreciate it. We put out a pretty neat publication last week, I think. That was the article on the Surefire SOCOM556-MINI2 on the 14.5-inch mid-length gas AR. We got a lot of great feedback on that article, and I think it helped a lot of people, which was the goal. So today what we're going to do, as is tradition, is tackle the technical discussion of that article. Also, I wanted to directly address some user experience feedback we got on social media. Since this silencer is so popular, I thought that would also be helpful for you folks. I think if you've shot a 556 RC2 and a 556 MINI2, or maybe you're interested in either or both of those silencers for your particular systems, I think the article is going to be of value to you, and hopefully the previous podcast and the technical discussion on this episode of the podcast will be useful to you as well. We'll have to see how it goes, okay? Before we get into it, I'd like to say a few words about the sponsors who make this podcast possible. And as always, if you're listening on YouTube or Spotify or wherever you consume podcasts, there are timestamps in the show notes that we place there directly to help you be able to skip to the relevant topics to your heart's content. Okay? All right, let's get into this. The J Situation Podcast is proudly sponsored by Legion Athletics. You should know that because nothing you do, exercise, sports, really anything is worth doing without consistency. And you got to do it all the time if you want to be good at it, okay? And Legion Athletics can help you with that. They got whey protein, pre-workout, post-workouts, vitamins, minerals, powders. They don't have everything you need, but they do have quite a lot of it. And they all are actually expanding their offerings every day. They even have some cool protein cookies I've tried, which aren't bad. So yeah, visit legionathletics.com. There's a link in the show notes, code word PewScience, to save 20% off your first order. That's right. And if you keep using that code, you'll get double loyalty points every time you order using that code. And then you can use those points, and you essentially, if you work out the math, it's a net 10% off everything you buy forever from them every time you use the code, if you use points. You know what I'm saying? So get strong. It's important. Legion Athletics. The podcast is also sponsored by Top Gun Range Houston. If you're in the Houston area, even if you're just passing through on a business trip or something, it's worth checking out. They have a 15-lane indoor shooting range, which is pretty cool because you can shoot rain or shine. And they also have the largest firearm rental fleet in the entire state of Texas, so you don't have to bring a gun if you don't want to. You can rent pistols and rifles and shotguns and even machine guns. And now they're even letting you rent silencers. So that's a huge deal. Okay. I know eForms is running pretty fast for individual transfers right now, but don't get it twisted. Getting silencer experience before you buy is still really good. So go check them out. Okay. You can actually check out their rental inventory on their website at topgunrange.com. You can also find them on Instagram at topgunrange. Okay. This is also brought to you by High-End Armament Technologies. That's HEAT, a dealer of exactly that, high-end arms and accessories. They have significant longevity in the machine gun game, the NFA game, as well as significant expertise in both the procurement and the operation of night vision, thermal optics, infrared sighting systems. You can check them out at highendarms.com, on Instagram at highendarms, and they even have a Facebook page, which is, you guessed it, also High End Arms. Okay, I hope they can help you folks out if you need it. Tell them Jay sent you. This episode is also proudly sponsored by Silencer Shop. That's right. You can use their kiosk, do your fingerprints and photos electronically, and in turn, you cut down on errors. You simplify your silencer purchasing process. You get a money-back guarantee. It's pretty good. No transfer fees, no paperwork errors. Just you and your silencer with no drama. It truly is silencer ownership simplified. That's right. And finally, and most importantly, this podcast is brought to you by the PewScience Laboratory. I'm Jay, the technical director of the lab, and in the interest of public education, the lab sponsors the podcast, runs a public research effort, and our goal with doing all this is to continue to push the silencer industry forward one test at a time, you can visit our website at pewscience.com for the suppression rating. It's the simplest and most accurate hearing safe rating for suppressed small arms. It's based on true human inner ear response of the entire gunshot from before the combustion takes place all the way until all the combustion is gone out of the system. That's right. Pew Science is the home of the silencer sound standard. There are 7 sections, and it contains the most in-depth and accurate silencer data and analysis in the world. That's right. It's all available to the public. 247.com or 24/7 on pewscience.com. Oh, that'd be crazy if you went to that website. You can support this podcast. You can support Pew Science. You can support all of the public testing that we do for you folks by joining with a membership at pewscience.com, and that does help. Case in point, we just published a rather large Surefire article thanks to your member contributions. That's really great. That's the type of research we can do with those funds. There's also a donate feature that can help too. If you're not into contributing all the time, I get it. Donate feature can help if you want to throw us a bone every once in a while. And you know what? If you don't want to give anything, that's also totally fine. Believe me. Something that's free, doesn't cost you anything. Just give the podcast a good rating on if you enjoy it. Good rating on Spotify or iTunes or wherever you get your podcast, and give it a thumbs up and a like and subscribe on the YouTubes. Let folks know that silencers and guns are awesome, and we can work together to normalize the use of suppressed small arms. Use physics-based education to get more armament. I mean, it's really a win-win. So again, like I said in the intro, I do have 2 topics prepared for you today. Topic 1, Sound Signature Review 6144. That's the Surefire SOCOM556-MINI2 on the 14.5-inch M4A1 midgas system. This was 2 mounts in 2 tests. The 3-prong of the WARCOMP will tackle the technical discussion of this white paper that was published on the 6th of March. Okay, and then the topic 2 will be actually a description of a mini field case study. That's right. Mini2 on the HK416. Yes. Compared with the RC2. Yeah. This is a field report from this past weekend. We took the feedback from 6144 that some of you folks had on the internet, and we put it into practice ourselves. That's right. You have to wonder, is the Surefire 556-MINI2 low back pressure? Well, no. But does it have lower back pressure than the RC2? Well, yeah. It seems it does, so we'll talk about that. Okay. It's going to be great. It's going to be a great podcast. Okay, so topic 1, a time of 7 minutes and 45 seconds. Oh, very good. 1 second. Okay, yeah, topic 1, Sound Signature Review 6144. The Surefire SOCOM556-MINI2. It's a small silencer on the 14.5 mid-gas, 2 mounts. There's so much information. This was a cool one, guys. It really was. It was really fun, actually. I did really enjoy this. I have always wanted to mess with a Mini2, and I'm glad we were able to get this one done. I really am. And it was really an easy choice. Surefire literally tells you, hey, we have a silencer solution for barrel lengths 14.5 inches or longer. Check it out. And so it's an easy pick for the next 14.5 inch article. And here we are, right? It was actually not. This was not like one of those things, I wonder what we're going to test next. No, dude, we had this planned for quite a long time. We had so much demand for this silencer. And it's so great we picked the 14.5 inch host because it's like the perfect test for this thing, right? It's like peas and carrots or something like that, even though I don't like peas that much. So it couldn't have worked out better because the RC2 kicked off the 14.5 inch pedigree, right? As is tradition with 556, I think we're always going to do that. It is rare that we have such a cool and useful data set that's so small in the case of the 14.5 inch set right now. But I do think the 14.5 inch data set is off not just to a running start, but to a sprint. I really do love it. So again, we got a ton of requests for the silencer after we introduced the 14.5 inch mid-length gas test host, actually. Like right as we introduced the host, right out of the gate, people were like, Mini2, you got to test the Mini2. Like when we tested the RC2, they're like, whoa, this is a 14.5 inch, guys. You need to test the Mini2. And we're like, wow, this is quite the emphatic request. It was actually significant. The amount of emails, it was nuts. And we're like, okay. That's interesting. And I think that's probably due to a few reasons. One, again, like the fact that Surefire has recommended this for 14.5-inch and longer barrels. Okay, I've already touched on that. But the other reason is Surefire just has incredibly high demand. Okay, like they're extremely popular silencers. Okay, so anytime they are. So before we get into this, let's talk big picture to get you a little bit grounded right now. That's what I would like to do. So most people who shoot ARs are shooting ARs with 14.5-inch barrels or longer, correct? Like we all agree, like not just you enthusiast people, but like most people in general are shooting ARs. Like most people that have an AR in the US are shooting ARs with barrels that are at least 14.5 inches or longer. Yes? Okay. I think we can all agree on that. Now, if you agree with that, what's the next thing? Well, a lot of people have pinned and welded muzzle devices on their 14.5-inch guns, if they're 14.5-inch guns, right? And why? Well, so they can reach that arbitrarily legal non-NFA barrel length of 16 inches. So this test is very important in that it applies to more people than most tests may apply. Okay, so remember, the goal of the Pew Science effort is multifaceted, and we are hitting a lot of different wants and needs for a lot of different people, including contracted work for manufacturers, as many of you have seen over the years. Now, one of the big parts of the effort is that it started with, and that's actually never going away, is hugely important studies with a lot of data utility. And so I don't want to beat the dead horse, but this is definitely one of those studies. So what else do we need to say before we get into this? One more thing. So before we get into the data, you start talking about pinned and welded muzzle devices on guns, right? So what do you think is on the dang gun? Well, is it just 3 prongs? Well, no. WARCOMPs are everywhere, right? And a lot of them are pinned and welded. So we did those 2 tests. And that's important, guys. The conclusions are not the same from both mounts. They're just not. Okay, they're not. So the mounts change the results, and it's not made up. Okay, it's meaningful, it's real. And I think you'll see when you're finished going through the article, if you haven't already reviewed it, the barrel length you use for yourself, it might determine how much you care about your mount. It really depends on your requirements, okay? As always, use case dictates your setup, okay? So let's get into it. Let's talk about this Mini2. Take an RC2, shorten it. You with me? Close your eyes. Picture this. Take your RC2 and make it almost 22% shorter. What do you get? Mini2. That's right. Same type of mount interface, same blast chamber, same proximal vents to an annulus, less baffles. The Mini2 is 5 inches long when mounted, guys. 5 inches from the barrel shoulder. This is a short silencer. And some of you, wanting to talk about other K silencers like the Polonium K. No, man, that's 5.3 inches long. Some of you, you want to talk about a Sandman K. No, that's 5.4 inches long. No, the Surefire SOCOM556-MINI2 is 5 inches long. It's not 5.5, 5.4, 5.3. No, it's 5. It's 5, okay? So consider that. I just want you to consider this. I'm not trying to sell you Surefire silencer, obviously. I really need you to understand the gravity, okay? So, or at least the context. It's a big deal. So now, let's talk about another parameter that it can trip you up. Is the weight that different between the 2 systems, or the mass? Is the mass that different? Well, not hugely different, right? Now keep in mind, you still have the same mount and hardware. So you go from 20.8 ounces with the RC2, down to a total of 20 or of 17.9. Well, so you're getting like, what is that? 15% weight reduction with an almost 22% length reduction. So think about that. And the more you think about it, the more you would expect that, given what you're actually taking away from the silencer and what you're actually not taking away from the silencer when you make it shorter, given this type of design. You understand? I'm harping on these physical characteristics first because I want to give you guys perspective and context. Okay, you want to go short a lot of times with your silencers. I heard a lot of people say that, but you also need to be realistic about what you gain from doing so. Form factor is the biggest thing here in this talk. Length would be what you are chasing if you decide to go with a system like this. Really, that's the primary parameter. A lot of, and this is, I know, a tiny soapbox moment, be patient. I will say there's a lot of folks that they talk about some kind of efficiency with silencers, and oh gosh, for the volume we are so efficient, or for the weight we're so efficient. And it doesn't matter what the company's marketing things are saying to you about it. Doesn't, forget about all that and just think about what you need, because the diameter of a silencer and the length of a silencer and the weight of the silencer and the volume of the silencer, none of that matters to you at all unless that specific parameter controls part of your use case. Okay? So I'm trying to really make you think about, don't listen to noise. Listen to parameters that truly influence your use case, and man, you're going to be way happier at the end of the day. Okay? So just pay attention to the actual data and you're going to have a really good time. Okay? So we'll talk about that. So again, with the Mini 2, what do most people chase? Why was the Mini 2 even created? It's created to get it's for the shortest dang length and squeezing the most capability out of the silencer that Surefire could do with the RC design. That's the goal of the Mini 2. Okay, so let's dive into the article. All right, what I'm going to do, one second. What I'm going to do, I've pulled up article 6144 from pewscience.com. I have the full version of the review, which is the Pew Science member version. I have that pulled up. If you're a member, please pull that up. You can follow along at home if you like. If you're not a member, that's totally fine. You can pull up the free version and still follow along. I will not create a situation in which you get lost. I promise. It's going to be seamless for all of you. Okay? It's going to be great. So we'll dive in. You got it pulled up? Let's go. Okay. So we're going to start from the top, as is tradition. The bottom line up front here is that there's a 28.0 suppression rating at the muzzle on the 14.5-inch mid-length gas system with a 3-prong flash hider with this little silencer. Okay. At the muzzle, like 1 meter left of the end cap, that's what that means. You have a 28.0 flat with a 3-prong. Now, what happens when you use a WARCOMP? Well, you go from 28 flat down to 25.2. Okay, a few points. You lost a few points. Okay, fine. Now, at the shooter's ear with a 3-prong, 21.4. Okay. What does the WARCOMP do? Well, it drops it to 17.2. Drops a little more. Dropped it a little more. Interesting. Right? So right away, an easy conclusion to see here is that on this gun, with the Mini 2, you hurt the shooter a little bit more than bystanders in the free field if you use a WARCOMP instead of a 3-prong. Right? Now, what about enclosed spaces or near objects? We'll talk about that, but I think let's talk about free field for now. Okay? So best thing to do is talk about free field so you can compare everything else to everything else. It's the only way to do this in this way, correct? So there's tons of stuff in the article, and we're going to tackle this in a relatively organized way, or we'll never get through it because this study is incredibly long. Okay, so what we're going to do in typical podcast tradition and Pew Science parlance is we're going to scroll down to Figure 1 as we typically do. All the way down to Figure 1, you're going to see Figure 1A, and you're going to see Figure 1B. We're going to look at these waveforms. This is overpressure in the free field, measured 1 meter left of the silencer's end cap during the full time regime of weapon system operation. Okay? So you see, when you get into it, when you really start looking at the signature from the Mini 2, as stated in the article, you actually have a lot of similarity to the RC2 signature on this host weapon. It's really quite interesting. But there's key differentiators when you go from full-size RC to Mini. And the differentiators you see in these waveforms can really help you understand what to expect when you go from the RC to the Mini. So if you have an RC2, and you do or you don't have a Mini 2, or you are interested in a Mini 2, here's some great information, okay? If you closely examine the pressure history in Figure 1A, you'll see that you blow down pretty quickly. The bolt carry group comes back into battery not too differently in time from an RC2. So it's really not radically different in that respect. And that's something that's pretty important to understand about this type of silencer, and we're going to get into that as well, okay? So you get gas throttling in the signatures. Like if you look at Figure 1B, you can see it. You get gas throttling like you do with an RC2, with a lot of the same sequence on the gun. You just get it at a higher amplitude. And you got to remember this, right? You have less baffles, so you have less expansion volume and time. So whatever underexpanded gas reaches the end, it's at a higher pressure than with the RC2 because the rest of the silencer is very similar. That's very important for the case study if you were to write such a case study comparing the two. And this phenomena that I just mentioned, that time-dependent phenomena that is exemplified by the two silencers, to view it in an easier to understand way, check out the gas momentum transfer potential of the waves. That's a fancy way of saying the impulse. That's right. That's Figure 2. We have a Figure 2A, we have a Figure 2B, and you can see how the initial slope of the curves is steeper with the Mini 2 than with the RC2. That's right. You see how in this article, you see how those curves are reaching their maximum more quickly than in the case of the RC2? Do you know why that is? Gas is getting out of the silencer faster. Yeah. Why? It runs out of time. Okay? You run out of time because you ran out of expansion volume before you reach the end state. That's right. Gas comes out earlier, which means that's another way of saying faster. And it's not a single point in time. It's not a single point in time. It's a continuum. So now the Mini 2 lets out gas faster than the RC2. And maybe a little surprising, a thing that's maybe surprising to you is how consistent it is given the size. That's one thing I noticed. I was like, dang, for such a short little silencer, sure is consistent. Not too shabby, you know? It's kind of cool. And actually to that point, if you do want to compare the behavior of the Mini 2 with the RC2, please make sure to do it on the same gun. So go back to Article 6.128 for that with the RC2. Okay, remember, because the original RC2 test was Article 652, but that was a different weapon. That was the Mark 18. And for all of you folks brand new to silencers, yes, the Mark 18 and the M4 both shoot the 5.56 cartridge, but the signatures and the physics are significantly different because the barrel lengths are significantly different. And that does make a difference for silencer performance in some ways. Okay, so I just wanted to let you know, compare apples to apples. So far what we've done, well, we've compared the gross gas propagation from the Mini 2 and the RC2. We know they're both dedicated bore 5.56 silencers. We know that they're both trapping gas relatively well. We know in both silencers, it all starts with the proximal vents. Right. There are vents in the blast chamber. There are. In both silencers, in the RC2 and the Mini 2. And those vents are behind where you think they are. If you reach your finger in, and then you pull back a little bit, you will feel them around the rear circumference of the blast chamber. That's right. Those vents allow the blast pressure to expand into an annular cavity. That's right. And in addition to expanding forward through the main bore of the silencer, the gases go into that cavity as well. It's really cool. So what happens when you shoot an RC2? Let's talk about that. Let's talk about RC2 first, and we'll move to Mini 2. So what happens when you shoot an RC2 now that you know what it looks like inside? Well, muzzle blast expands out of the muzzle, enters the blast chamber, reflects off of the blast baffle. Wave expansion and coalescence continues to occur. You start to expand into the annular cavity. Combustion gases continue to propagate. They expand and they cool. And the cavity keeps getting fed. Expansion keeps happening. You keep blowing down out of the primary bore until you finally blow all the pressure down out of the end cap and you get back to ambient. That's physically what happens when you shoot an RC2. Okay, so what happens at the Mini 2? Well, I mean, exactly the same thing, right? Except there's two differences. There's two differences, right? There's two different phenomena. And there's a race. You can think of it like this. You got two teams in each silencer. There's two teams in each silencer running a race. And it's a relay race. Okay? So, the team in lane 1. You got gas expansion into the annulus through the proximal vents and a potential stagnation pressure. The team in lane 2, you got blowdown out of the end cap from the primary bore. Yes. And between the two lanes, you have a flexible coupler that won't let one exist without the other. You're actually bound together by initial conditions of the blast from the muzzle orifice. You're tied together by physics. Who is the guy with the checkered flag watching all of this nonsense? Who's the guy with the checkered flag in each of the silencers? Well, it's the gun. And specifically, the gun actually has two checkered flags. One's at the gas port inside the barrel. Maybe the other one is at the chamber. And this guy with like multiple hands and multiple eyes, he's watching like a hawk. It's not even a normal official, really. This guy's a freak. He's like an alien. He can look at multiple things at once. I like those lizards with the eyes that go all weird. Like chameleons. Stay with me. You continue to dump high-pressure gas into the silencer. You expand into the blast chamber, into the annulus. What happens first? Who runs the race? Who's running? Who's even running in the race? You got two teams in each silencer. They have people running. They're running super fast. How fast are they running? Well, they're running at supersonic velocities, and it's not just supersonic; it's multiple Mach numbers. Because remember, you're not even in air anymore. You're actually running through underexpanded superheated gas, so their Mach numbers even increased even further. So, if you stagnate pressure in your annulus fast enough, depending on the size of the two annuli between the two silencers, and you simultaneously are expanding through the bore line as well, the baffle stack that is shorter is going to have gas reach free expansion sooner. No? What is free expansion? Well, that's the condition where your underexpanded gas reaches atmosphere and can do whatever it wants. No holds barred. It can just go expand forever, really, if it really wants to. Yes, it's free expansion. It's free to expand. It's literally the definition of it. So the bottom line here is that every single thing in the Mini 2 is the same in the RC2 in early time. In early time, it's the same. There's a point in time where it stops being the same, though. The point in time where the two teams in each silencer finish their race, it's different. No matter what fuel you use, no matter what car you use, no matter what in this race, no matter what the barrel is, what the ammo is, no matter what, the race in the Mini 2 is going to end first, dude. The race in the Mini 2 is going to end first. Why? There's less silencer. Everything is the same except the very end. You can't say this all the time for different silencers of different lengths, but you can when they're like this. The end is sooner, so the race finishes sooner. Guys, this is exactly the same thing that happens when you use a rugged razor versus the short configuration of a rugged surge, or the long configuration of a rugged surge, or the full configuration of a rugged radiant. In the case of the RC2 and the Mini 2, it's almost the same silencer, but one has more baffles. The blast chamber is identical. Okay, the difference, and the difference is when you look at the Surefire system, when you compare an RC2 and a Mini 2 to a Razor and a Surge. So, okay. In your left hand, you got RC2 and Mini 2. In your right hand, you have Razor and Surge. What's the difference between the two hands? Well, the Mini 2 still has a lot of baffles compared to, like, it's not like you just took all the baffles out of RC2. No, there's still a bunch in the Mini 2, and it's still actually a very efficient silencer. This is part of the reason why you don't see a huge difference in weapon kinematics with the Mini 2 and RC2 like you do with a Razor and a Surge. With the Surefire system, you're holding alpha constant, roughly, and you're varying omega. I know that I'm using those simple terms because that's why I created the terms. It makes it easier to explain it to you. And how do we know that's true, though? How do we know that you're holding alpha constant and varying omega? Same blast chamber system, and we see omega change in the raw data. And guys, it's not proprietary, and it's not some made-up thing. It's literally gas momentum transfer rate, measurable by anyone. That's what the omega metric is defined as, the free field gas momentum transfer rate. And I didn't call it that because that's like way longer to say. Okay? It's measurable by anyone. Anyone can measure it. And they have. They have measured it. So it's been validated, and it's easy. It's Mickey Mouse for everyone that tests silencers like this. Okay? So that's where we are. Now, again, let's go back to the silencers. With the Razor and the Surge, you're holding alpha constant as well, but the omega shift is like huge. Okay, just do the way those silencers are. When you understand this concept of like having two identical silencers and making one just one longer with more baffles, but they have the same type of baffle in the same blast chamber. When you understand that concept, read research note 1 in the article, and or read it first before you understand it, and help you. Maybe it'll help you understand whatever. You're going to see the big picture conclusions right away. The big picture here is that you're not going to get a huge cyclic rate change between the Mini 2 and RC2. You're just not going to get a huge cyclic rate change. You're not going to get a huge gas blowback change here, but you're going to get a change. And the change is going to be that your weapon will slow down and be slightly less gassy with the Mini 2. All other things equal. And you could just use the omega metric to see that due to the constant alpha. Or you could look at all of the other indicators too. Or you could do what I did in the next topic in the field, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. Okay, no matter what choice you pick out of those things, you're going to get the same answer, and we'll talk about it. And I want to talk about recoil because that's also something to think about, and it ties directly into some of this. So we'll talk about that. Okay, so we'll table that for now. Now, what's another big picture conclusion? Another big picture conclusion here. You're going to have more hazard to the operator and more hazard to bystanders with a Mini 2 than you are with an RC2. Just physics dictates that. That's what the article shows you. Remember, you have more gas momentum leaving the front of the silencer, and it's leaving sooner. Even if you have a little bit lower back pressure, by the time it really matters, you have a lot to contend with from that extra muzzle blast. Many times with systems as similar as these two, like the RC2 and the Mini 2, there's no free lunch. There's no free lunch. Many times. Sometimes you have lunch that's very cheap. In this case, it's not. Now, in the member article, Pew Science members will see some things in the gas dynamics of the shooter's ear that are pretty telling. You do need to know that. I actually found this to be pretty interesting myself, actually. It was really cool to see the impulse histories of the shooters here, that they're doing something you might expect from a silencer like this. In that case, in that it's short and higher flow rate, it is something to be somewhat expected, I thought. From an analytical standpoint and an engineering standpoint, I think it's kind of cool. You can get a lot of this information from just basic overpressure histories at the end of the day. It kind of makes me smile every day I see it. Just take the data and really look at it, and you'll be a little surprised just how many conclusions you can pull. I think we used this analogy before on the podcast of squeezing the lemon, like getting all the juice, right? And that's pretty cool. So check that out. If you're a member, please, I implore you. It's pretty wild. You can get a lot of info out of that. So you remember, this article has 2 tests in it. And it's one of those papers. It has 2 tests, so there's a lot going on. Those of you familiar with Surefire rifle silencer testing analysis from Pew Science will recall that we have done many WARCOMP versus 3-prong evaluations over the years. This one is kind of cool. And right up front, I want to say, guys, if you really think about it, it's the ports in the WARCOMP that are causing the most difference here, right? It's the ports in the WARCOMP that are causing the most difference. Think about it, guys. The Surefire system, it's going to leak no matter what. Surefire silencers leak. The mount, rather. Surefire silencer mounts leak. That's just, they do. And really what matters is all about when the gas gets to expand. So, if the gas expands out of the barrel muzzle into the blast chamber, and that happens first, you get one behavior. Let's call that 3-prong. Okay. If a given proportion of gas expands out of the ports, and those ports are relatively close to an interface that doesn't have a good seal, you get another behavior. Let's call that WARCOMP. Okay? Like I just wanted you guys to realize I'm not picking on the muzzle devices. I'm explaining 2 different physical phenomena, and the 2 muzzle devices have those. So if you get like very emotional and upset that like the mount, your favorite mount didn't work right, well, forget about that. Just think about the physics and it'll make you feel better. And along those lines, there are some basic blast physics that are shown in the article in an attempt to help you further understand exactly what happens with WARCOMP. And it should also really help you understand what happens with other things as well, like piston guns or semi-automatic guns in general and stuff like that. I think this is a good time to talk about that. You know, the thing you should think about is that multiple sources of overpressure can exist in a continuum simultaneously, and they are superimposed. They're additive. Yeah, that's right. And when we talk about that, when we talk about wave coalescence, another way to say that is that separate overpressure waves or separate blast waves are adding together and creating a resultant wave with different properties. That's right. The new wave has different amplitude, different frequency, different phase, different duration. I mean, it's actually quite different. So let's do that now. Let's talk about some practical examples of that and exactly what that means. Maybe this will help you relate to this. I want to kind of nip this in the bud for everybody, okay? So let's start simple. Let's say you have a bolt gun, okay? You shoot the gun. There's sound that happens inside the system that comes out through traveling through the body of the weapon. Sure, you know that. But what's the biggest source of overpressure? Well, it's out of the end cap of the silencer or the muzzle of the weapon if it's on suppressed, wherever. But it's a bolt gun. You get it? That's the bolt gun. Now, you do have that source that came from the body of the gun itself, and you also have wave reflections of that and of the muzzle blast off of the ground, and all of those are coming back to you. And remember, as they come back, they're combining with the other continuous sources of overpressure. So remember, it takes time for the muzzle blast to blow down from the silencer too. So even in a bolt gun silencer test, there are multiple examples of blast wave coalescence and additive phenomena that are influencing the final blast wave properties of your ears. The amplitude, the frequency, the phase, the duration of the blast loads. The blast loads that actually matter. Those are changing due to this. And that's just on a bolt gun. Yes, you see. Now let's add one complication. What happens on an AR? Well, the same exact thing with a bolt gun at first. You got the stuff in your gun, you got the stuff in the silencer, you got the stuff out of the silencer, and the wave propagation from those things are real. The reflections around you from those waves, from the ground and other stuff is real. It's super complex in a bolt gun, and it's super complex in an AR in early time too. But then what happens with an AR? Well, then your bolt carrier group moves rearward, and your chamber opens to atmosphere before the pressure inside is bled down to ambient. Don't even think. Just ignore the gas tube for now. Yeah. The pressure in your chamber is not ambient yet, and the thing's already opening. What does that do? Well, it creates a sudden pressure differential. Because of that sudden pressure differential between your open chamber and atmosphere, what is created? A blast load. Yeah. So now another source of blast load is emitted by the weapon system. And the cycle continues. Those waves have to coalesce with the other waves there, and then it changes the amplitude and the frequency and the phase and the duration of the resultant wave that hits your ears. Okay. You still with me? Cool. Let's add one more complication. You ready? What happens when you have a piston system? Oh my goodness. The piston vent. Oh no. What happens when the vent lets pressurized gas into atmosphere suddenly? Blast load. Oh my God, there's another one. That's right. And in that case, you have another blast load. Oh my God. They keep on coming, these blast loads. Okay. Oh my God. Are you getting overwhelmed? Don't be overwhelmed. We captured it all at Puissance, remember? That's right. Why would you look at only one peak when everything's happening at different points in time and then they're coalescing? Oh my God. You're starting to get it. Now, back to the article in the 14.5-inch M4, which is not a piston. It's a direct impingement gun. Okay, fine. Do you have a piston vent? Well, no, you don't. What do you have in one of these tests? Oh, you have a WARCOMP. Oh, what does a WARCOMP do? Well, you already know that. It gives you another source of blast load. Saw that one coming. And it just so happens this particular blast load, the source of it is pretty high pressure, like very high pressure. And why is that? Well, it's coming directly from muzzle blast before it gets a chance to go through the silencer. There's the pay dirt. It is at the mount interface, guys. Sure, you get some expansion as it has to make its way through all the nooks and the crannies, but make no mistake, it's high pressure, it is a blast load, and it's coming for you. And all the waves coalesce, and that's going to occur, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. The WARCOMP blast load leak is going to combine with muzzle blast even before the ejection port blast is there. And you want to see what that looks like with numbers in both amplitude and duration. You want to see what it looks like measured? Look at figure 5B in the article, scroll down. It shows you right there. That's from the test. It's right there. Muzzle blast from the WARCOMP with a Mini2 in the free field is right there. It's in black and white. It's in a graph. It's in a data plot. It's there. That entire thing I just talked about, it's right there. Okay, and if you want to maybe it's not you didn't get all the analogies and stuff, and you want to read what I just said about all this in in a shorter way that's more succinct, just read Research Note 8. Like scroll down further, Research Note 8 says exactly what I just said in like just a paragraph. Okay? So you take all this. There's even more data and analysis in the article, but this right here, this coalescence, it's a really big thing to understand, and I don't want to skip over that. So just so you know, like in Figure 5B, you see that first peak. See how it says shot 2, coupled jet and mount leak, like they're together, dude. It's coupled. See how the rise time is a little different, but that's for another reason, and the members see that. But yes, there's still blast loads. And again, and I want to be very clear with you. This is not a commercial or an advertisement. It is a sincere thing I'm saying right now, and I do mean it. If you are a member who supports the effort, the signatures at the shooter's ear from the Mini2 with the WARCOMP in this article are freaking amazing. I really do mean that. It's just really, really good data. It shows incredibly clear physics that demonstrate blast wave coalescence. It also shows, like I was just about to tell you, it also shows some rise time physics that are super interesting. And frankly, I never thought I would be explaining this to all you guys. This, some of you know this, some of you don't. This is stuff I do every day in my primary career with blast effects. So to be able to show it to you guys here, like in this article, it gets me fired up. Super passionate, because although it is true that Pew Science combines my main career and my passion, I mean, I'm kind of living the dream in that way. And I will say that. I do love what I do. Articles like this really ramp it up. It's really taken it up a notch, because I really get to teach you about things that, frankly, few people get to learn about ever. Like you're really not going to get that. And so from a lot of folks. And so it's super niche. Okay. This is like super niche stuff. I mean, super nerdy blast physics, but we do it every day. And now you get a glimpse of it. And I was tickled that we could do it. It was really pleasing to me. Okay. And so again, and you can keep that going. Members also, they get one more section in the report that's special for them, and it's a direct overlay comparison of the 3-prong and the WARCOMP blast loads. And so if all of the stuff I'm talking about now wasn't clear before, I think if you see that, it will give you clarity if you do need it. Okay. So I'm done with that. I'm done talking about the member stuff. I really think that's important. And I thank you for your support. It does make all this possible. So that's why I provide that stuff for members. It's not that like there's like some people are like, oh, he puts data behind a paywall. It's like, no, not really. I'm actually the data you need to make your decisions is already free with the suppression rating and stuff. And the main conclusions in the article. The stuff that's protected on the website is for members as a thank you for helping it to happen. That's the way I think of it. And I do mean that, because it's really special. I think that's really cool. And I'm telling you, I was very pleased that we were able to show it to you. Now, let's get down to brass tacks. And for all of you here, I told you I wouldn't leave you behind. For all of you, I want you to scroll all the way down to Figure 11, which is going to be it's in the public review. This is the bar chart. This is where you can really easily visualize both the differences in the Mini2 performance on the 14.5-inch mid with both mounts, but also the differences between the Mini2 and the RC2 with both mounts. And you got the Cat WB we tested in there too. That's the current M4 data set on the website. So, you're seeing, really, you look at the graph, you're seeing with only 5 overall data points, quite the spectrum of performance on this weapon system, right? Quite the spectrum. And to be clear, all of the silencer configurations on this chart are not super low back pressure or something. I mean, none of these things are super low back pressure, but none of them are high back pressure either. It's interesting. It really is. I mean, the Surefire technology is pretty old, but it does vent to an annulus pretty early in time. The Surefire, man, I tell you what, the Surefire RC2 series, the Mini 2 series, is really ahead of its time. I do believe that. Now, the CAT WB, that's employing surge bypass, which is a much more advanced technology, uses some basic principles in tandem to keep the weapon from overfunctioning, but also significantly suppress blast loads. So I do find that to be very interesting. I'm just giving you an overall flavor of this. Let me give you some overall conclusions that are also interesting. And I listed these conclusions on social media last week when we released this. We put them in the article as well. If you scroll down actually past figure 11, I think there's 5 in there. If you want a quick and dirty estimate, like you want a quick and dirty estimate of Mini 2 behavior, shooting a Mini 2 on an M4 with a 3-prong is kind of like shooting an RC2 on an M4 with a WARCOMP. For the operator in the free field. Okay, I know I put a strict caveat on it, but that's the way you can give conclusions that are correct. Okay. What's another conclusion that's good? Well, what are we seeing kind of now as we've done more of these tests? Well, it looks like, and it appears to be that WARCOMP blast load leaks are worse for the operator when you're barrel shorter. Oh, that's right. Why? Well, standoff distance from blast load source matters. Physics is still real. We all know that. Remember the Mark 18 WARCOMP test with the RC2? And it was bad. Barrel was shorter. Barrel was shorter makes WARCOMP issues worse for a couple of reasons. Pressure and standoff. You looked at this Surefire RC2. WARCOMP wasn't as bad, So... Okay, Mini 2. What happened with Mini 2? Well, your WARCOMP leak's not as bad because you're on an M4, but the blast load was more intense than the RC2 because sounds are shorter and the Mini 2 is louder. Okay, so that's a pretty big conclusion. Just if you look at the data, you can take that away from that. What else can you take away? Well, you look at this. You look at the spectrum, you squint your eyes, you don't look at any of the names, but you know that some of the blue line, but the blue bars are shorter than the other blue bars, and some of the red bars are shorter than the other red bars, and you look at that, and what's a big overall conclusion you can make about the M4 right now? Well, looks like an M4 can be suppressed pretty well. But it also looks like an M4 can be really loud. Yeah. Not all systems are created equal, including unsuppressed versus suppressed. A lot of you know that already, but you continue to hear people say, well, gosh, I don't want to suppress a 5.56 rifle. 5.56 is just so loud anyway. Why would I even suppress it? Well, I encourage you to look at the public research supplement 6127, where you see the blast loads in the free field of unsuppressed gunshots, and look at the magnitudes of those. And then compare them with any suppressed article, and that's one piece of physical evidence for you to understand. And then another would be figure 11, when you see the unsuppressed suppression rating for the M4. That's single digits. And then you even have a loud system like a Mini 2 with a WARCOMP, and your level of protection is increasing by hundreds and hundreds of %. So it's important for folks brand new to silencers or experienced with silencers to understand that there is a spectrum of signature severity and risk. Okay, so that's another conclusion. What's another conclusion you can draw from this article that many of you may have drawn previously from other articles or other bits of peace science research? Well, reduced back pressure is great for the shooter, right? With regard to reducing overpressure hazard risk, sure. except when it's at the cost of such severe muzzle blast that that wave coalescence bites you. And again, a lot of you know that too. But now you have that vocabulary and those tools we've been talking about. You understand that there are multiple sources of overpressure combine different amplitude, frequency, phase, duration. It changes everything. Superposition. Simultaneous blast load wave coalescence. These sound like big crazy words, but they're not. They're in your vocabulary now. It's awesome. Okay, so you take all of this, you take crumble up in a ball and eat it, or whatever. All in all, it's a cool data set. It gives you a lot of information, but you do need more data, don't you? The Mini2 it's doing really good, in my opinion, for its size on the M4. All things considered. Okay. And that's probably why you see so many anecdotal reports of folks liking it. Now remember, it's not an overboard K silencer like so many of you are used to. Okay? Remember that time in silencer industry history when people started saying you could just use a 30 caliber silencer on a 556 AR and get the same performance as a dedicated bore silencer for the cartridge? Remember that? Pepperidge Farm remembers. Well, you should also know that some companies never said that. And Surefire is one of those companies. Go figure, that's right. And I don't care how old the silencer is. And I don't care how old the technology in the silencer is. Physics never changes. The rules don't change with industry marketing changes, guys. Physics won't change. You will die. I will die. The Earth will die. And as long as this universe is still around, the physics, they're going to stay the same. Okay? So when you look at the shooter's ear risk in the plot, you can certainly see there's a spectrum. But it may surprise you that things aren't getting higher. Because, we've increased the barrel length by almost 50% over that of the Mark 18, right? But you got to remember, ejection port blast does matter, per the previous discussion. And the dwell time of the system's not super short. And the gas port is not super small. Now, is the system terribly overgassed from Daniel Defense? Well, absolutely not. Absolutely not. But any system that's going to minimize weapon function in early time is going to help you on this gun. It is. And if you can combine it with excellent muzzle suppression, you're going to really do incredible things. And that's where you see the RC2 do pretty well. That's why the RC2 did pretty well, because it had that better muzzle suppression over that of the Mini2. And that's also why you see the Cat WB pull away hard due to the technology in it. Okay, guys, it's just physics. Things are going to get interesting with the M4, guys. They are. Now, as you can imagine, the amount of data on the Mini2 is scarce for the public, as you can imagine. It is one of the reasons Pew Science did this. So, what have people said about the Mini2 versus the RC2 over the years? We've heard all kinds of stuff. Recently we've been digging and we found some really interesting stuff. I would like to talk about that in the next topic. So let's move into topic 2 at a time of 58 minutes and 36 seconds. Okay, very good. This will flow nicely from topic 1. Okay, so hopefully, if you guys have not listened to topic 1, hopefully you have. Okay, so topic 2, mini field case study. Okay, this is a little bit of a case study I performed this past weekend on the HK416 with the Mini2 and the RC2. I'll give you a field report. I'll talk about some user feedback we got. And something we put into practice here, just to perform a little test for you guys. Nothing super formal, but enough to kind of get our hands dirty and kind of get to the bottom of some stuff. Okay, with some back pressure claims, some other stuff. We wanted to know what was really going on in practice on a different weapon system, and that's what we did. So I do want to say, and this is important. I do want everyone to understand this. if you don't already, that if you guys ever pay attention to how I address user experiences that are publicly reported on social media that I happen to see, or if things are addressed directly at me that are topical and technical that we have time to discuss, when I see them, when I get questions, and even if they're in private, and they consider system performance and how it compares to the data, if you've seen how I handle that, you will know that I take them seriously. I take the user reports very seriously. I'm always willing to have dialogue to understand why a user's experience matches or maybe doesn't match. Maybe if a user's experience seems to be in conflict with any analytical conclusions we've presented on the website, I'd like to engage and speak with them and figure out why. It's important. And to my knowledge, in the history of the public Pew Science effort, there's less than a handful of legitimate gripes with analytical conclusions we've given. There hasn't been a lot that I've seen. Now, look, and I'll say this, just get out of the way. Yeah, you're gonna have the haters and the trolls and the liars and stuff, like the silencer company salespeople and the dealers who spread misinformation. I'm not talking about all of them. I'm just saying the certain ones. Look, we not only do we know which companies they are, we actually know the actual individuals at the companies doing it. It's so okay, done, enough. It's so much drama. It doesn't matter. We know that. And because it's happened for so long and we know who those exact people are, it doesn't matter. You're going to have that, fine. There's nothing you can do. Those people, they're lost. Forget it. Remember, you can be the biggest, juiciest peach in the whole wide world, and some people just don't like peaches, and they're just never gonna. You're never gonna please them, and they're just like that. They don't want to be happy. They just want to be contrary. It's fine. No way around it. That's the silencer industry, and it has those people forever. Now, we're not talking about those people. What we're talking about legitimate physics debates. Right, and a big one, and let's talk about them. A big one it's the OSS and the HuxWorks flow-through stuff, right? The flow-through technology characterization, and what does that potential conflict stem from? Well, it's how some of the people, they look at the big number at the top of the page, and that's the only thing they look at. They don't read the articles at all. They don't listen to the podcast ever, and they say, no, my experience with OSS silencers is that they're loud and Pew Science results are wrong. So, okay, well, we've addressed this by explaining many factors that should be considered, including environment, as well as inner ear frequency response. And we've examined this. We've reported in great detail, both on the podcast and the member research supplements for years. We talked about the boomy signature from OSS and HuxWorks. Silencers, the rifle silencers at least. We've talked about their lackluster subsonic performance with the rifle silencers. It's been explained by Pew Science publicly for years. It's crazy because it's a matter of public record. So it's 4 years and consistently for years. So let's get back to Surefire now and the purpose for this topic. To date, we have not received one report of our data or analysis not lining up with user experience with Surefire silencers. I have not received one. And again, I'm not talking about the anonymous internet trolls that work for a dealer or a silencer company wanting to disparage this effort because they can't control it. Those are not real people. Those are that's it's like you have a signal to noise ratio in your car stereo. That's noise, dude. That's road noise. They're literally road noise. Those people, they're like the little drunk bumps on the road. Okay, or those aren't drunk bumps. He said drunk bump. So we hadn't heard anything to date until last week. Oh, and it was a little bit whoa, really? It was actually pretty wild. And there was a public one on Reddit. It's cool. And it was fine. And a lot of you saw it. I saw it. Talked to the guy. Public on Reddit, a user was like, dude, honestly, I am surprised, given my experience with the Mini 2 and the RC2. He's like, I am surprised. I'm surprised that you're saying that the RC2 has higher back pressure than the Mini 2, I had an opposite experience. And I was like, I saw that and I was like, at first when I saw it, I was like, okay, wait a minute, who is this? And then I was like, you know what? I think this guy's like a legitimate, like this is a guy's like a real person. Like he's not a dealer or a sponsor. He's a real user. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna indulge this, and I'm gonna take it seriously. So I thought about it, and before I even responded to him, I considered different hypotheses about why someone would come to that conclusion. Why would he say that the Mini 2 had higher back pressure than the RC2? I was like, why is that? That's okay. So I actually, I asked for his email. He emailed me, talked to him, talked to his friend. Because the story was he and his friend were the ones that had this. They had this experience. They physically experienced something. Like they both were there. It's like two people, right? And so we gathered as much information that was reasonable as we could to understand what was going on. And one of the things you could define this is due diligence, right? Like if you want to take feedback someone gives you seriously, you want to do a little bit of due diligence, right? So, okay. So we take credible reports seriously. I feel like we can learn from them and maybe help not only the people given the report, maybe we help other people too. Sometimes this stuff helps us. It's like I learn every day from people. Like sometimes you can be wrong. So awesome, let's talk about it. I think me personally, my stance is I think everyone wins from information exchange. Like if the information's good. Okay, like I don't want to deal in garbage in, garbage out, right? But if there's good information, I want to hear it. It's awesome. And we also always ask for people's experiences. So the story goes with these two gentlemen. The story goes they both had these 416 rifles, right? These HK 416s, which if you guys don't know, it's a piston AR. Okay, the HK 416 system is a piston AR. So, and on their ARs, they had those fancy Norwegian adjustable gas blocks. Okay. Now this is getting super niche, I know. But I'm addressing it on the podcast because just stay with me. They had these fancy Norwegian adjustable gas blocks on the HK 416s. I know it's super niche. But you are, in fact, in luck because yours truly just happens to also be an HK obsessed weirdo. And I just so happen to also have a couple of those same adjustable gas blocks myself. That's right. So some of you may know this because in fact, last year I posted photos and detailed measurements of those gas blocks on the Pew Science website. I think it was last year that I posted them, whenever it was, whatever. If you go to like services and support under small arms technical data, like there's a whole thing on there. Okay. If you want to know exactly what I'm talking about. So again, the story goes, these folks were trying to tune their systems, tune their HKs by slowly drilling out the ports on the adjustment knobs in the gas box. And if you want to know what that looks like, go to the website. I'm not going to explain it to you, but they're essentially changing port sizes with the drill at the range dynamically. Okay. You got it? Cool. What silencers were they using when they were doing that? Well, they were using an RC2 and a Mini 2 with a 3-prong. Okay, cool. Now, their conclusion after this field exercise that they had performed was that they found, and this is what they told me, I'm just going off what they told me, they said they found they needed slightly more hole size with an RC2 than with a Mini 2. And implying that the Mini 2 was inducing more system back pressure in a gross sense than the RC2. Okay. So that's what they said. I found it very surprising, but I did not find it completely crazy. I just found it surprising. I was like, huh, that's surprising. I was like, you have surprised me. And I didn't think it was crazy because they seemed credible. So I was like, okay, I will listen to you. I have no reason to believe these people are lying. It'd be strange. I was like, why would you lie about that? It'd be like a lot of effort. So I was like, okay. So I started thinking about it. I was like, well, they did use 2 different guns. Okay. But they seemed careful. They're using a drill press at the range. They seem crazy like me. So, okay. I talked to them. So I listened to what they had to say, and I was like, okay. I understand. And we don't have to go into all of it, but I understand the limitations of what they told me, and I understand the pluses and minuses of what they did. So, okay. So I got all that in my head, and I was like, I made a judgment call. I was like, okay. I happened to have a window in time doing some other stuff. So what did I do? I grabbed our 10.4-inch 416 system out of our inventory at Pew Science that happens to have the same adjustable gas block on it. And now this differs from theirs. They were using like a 14-inch. Mine is a 10.4. So, okay, fine. My adjustable gas block for my 10.4 happens to be intended for the exact 416 system with a 10.4-inch barrel. It's a clone gun, but it's the gas block that I'm using, that Norwegian HK gas block, is intended for my barrel length. Like, I know that's correct. Like, again, the measurements are on the website, so I got that. So I took the gun, I installed a 3-prong, and man, I went whole hog. I put the HK buffer and spring in there. I mean, I'm going HK 416. Like, I know it's a clone gun, but mechanically this thing it's HK. Okay, except for like the safety thing, whatever. So I installed the 3-prong on the gun, and then I took a couple of ammo types out, 5.56, and then I took the MINI2 and the RC2 from the tests, same ones, and I went out shooting. Okay, that's all I took. It wasn't like an instrumented test, really. This was like, let's shoot the gun. Okay, let's do it. So what did I do? Like, at first, I was like, okay, let's start, like, if I was any user doing this, let's start super simple. I will do single shot magazine tests. I will see when we get locked back. I will see when I don't get locked back. I will see which setting on the gas blocks do what with both silencers. That's what I will do. So I did that. After that exercise, I got a conclusion that showed that the RC2 needed slightly less gas than the MINI2. Okay. This is the opposite of what those people experienced, and it's in line with what I thought would happen. Okay. So at first I was like, okay, so they're wrong, I'm right, done. I was like, no, let's give this the time it deserves. I thought of something. I was like, well, and some of you know this, and if you don't know this, it's kind of wild. When you're super close in function with certain systems, like on the bleeding edge of like lockback and not lockback, like on an AR, like a SCAR or whatever, when you're super close in function like that with certain systems, as the temperature changes, you might notice some strange things happening. Some of it has to do with gas expansion. When your systems have limited adjustability, and this often occurs on piston systems, you can get some false positives and some other stuff. So you have to be careful. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to do something else. I'm going to do something that the gun can't fool me on. The gun will be unable to fool me on this. I'm going to do full auto fire. I mean, it's the equalizer. It's going to tell me. It's going to tell me. It's like the gun won't be able to fool me on this. Same gun, same session with these two silencers due to the alpha state. This should tell me. This should prove something to me, because it's gonna try to mirror exactly what this. It's gonna try to replicate the conditions these gentlemen were speaking about. Now, this was really interesting. I did get a higher rate of fire with the RC2 than the MINI2. Again, contrary to what those two gentlemen said happened with them. And again, which is in line with what I thought would happen, sure. And I'm not saying, oh, I'm right. I am right, but that's not the interesting part. What was interesting to me was that the rate of fire was not super different between the two silencers. And I don't have numbers for you on that. Okay, I didn't like count it. I haven't Okay, so but I took videos of myself shooting too. Like I heard it when I was shooting, and I took videos to like double check. When reviewing the video again and again and again, it's closer than you may think it would be. It's interesting, and like it's closer than you would think if you just thought about a full size silencer and a mini silencer. Like if you were just thinking like. If I told you, oh yeah, full-size silencer and mini silencer, look at the rate of fire, like how different are they going to be on a 416? Like with the heavy HK buffer and spring, like intuitively you might think, oh, you're going to notice this huge difference. But really the rate of fire was not that much different, but was different. And when you look at it, I mean, despite it not being much different, it was different. And the RC2 does have more back pressure than the Mini 2 on a 416, like we thought, with Lake City M193 ammo. And the RC2 also has more back pressure than the 14.5-inch midgas AR in the test report, in both the tests you see in the article. So, do I know what those guys did to get a different result? And again, the guy actually mentioned that he tried it on one of his other guns too, and the same thing happened. So I was like, "What? I don't know what's going on with them. It doesn't make sense." But I don't know. Something is his silencer different? Like I don't know. Like there's obviously some unknowns, right? I'm willing to try again. I'm willing. I have an open mind. I'm totally willing to be wrong. I really am. I can't. I keep proving myself right. So I'm like, well, I'm still willing to be wrong. I just don't know how to show that. So I was like, let me do a little digging. I was like, maybe I can find some other. I know anecdotal evidence is spurious, but let's go ahead and search for more. So I did some more Googling. I was like, well, maybe I can find someone else saying the same thing as they did. Let me see if I can find someone else talking about a Mini 2 doing anything to suggest that it made a gun overfunction more than an RC2 would. Let me find that. And so I broke out my Google foo, and I started really looking at, like, I'm not just Googling, oh, is the Mini 2 higher back pressure? No. I'm looking at like all kinds of different synonyms for what symptoms users would think would happen due to certain physics. So I mean, I'm breaking out the search phrases, like the key phrases. I'm like really digging. I spent hours on this. I found, I think, maybe a total of 2 old reports on the internet, and I know this took me a while, of people describing Mini 2 use on their guns as more snappy than an RC2. Like, those are kind of the words they used. I was like, huh, what an interesting... But I found them. So, okay, cool. And so from that, I formed the following, like, hypothesis. And you can check me on this. The only thing I can think is that certain people are experiencing more recoil in the same system because more blast load is exiting the end cap of the silencer with a Mini 2 due to like lower flow restriction in late time, despite the alpha state being pretty close. So like you get similar early time blast reflections and annular expansion, which influences the start of everything, right? We talked about that in the previous topic. But you also have a higher omega with the RC2, which would cause higher temperature and pressure in the whole stack, leading to more artificial dwell time increase and barrel blast load impulse accumulation, which means you get more weapon function with the RC2. Okay, tracking. And the RC2 lets gas out of its end cap over a longer period of time at a lower pressure and amplitude, which decreases thrust. Right? So if your system is not tuned at all, let's like close your eyes and think. If your AR is not tuned at all, or maybe you're like, let's say your system's overgassed. If your system's overgassed or something, the Mini 2 might make it seem like your rifle's overfunctioning when compared with an RC2. But really what could be happening is your recoil reduction for muzzle blast thrust reduction is reduced. With an overfunctioning gun with both silencers, maybe you're going to notice more recoil with the Mini2 because there's more muzzle blast coming out the front. And that might make you think it's back pressure related if you don't know how an AR works, which it's not back pressure related. It's muzzle thrust related. Now, I'm not saying the two, and this isn't talking about those two gentlemen with the 416. This is talking about like the reports online. I was trying to find anecdotal reports myself in an independent search from people that were comparing Mini2 to RC2 with regard to weapon function. Now, I will say on social media privately, I have like 5 or 6 direct user reports supporting my conclusion and supporting the article's conclusion that the RC2 has higher back pressure. So I have plenty of those. I'm trying to find something supporting the 416 guys. I want to help them, and I want to help myself to understand where they're coming from, what happened to them. That's what I'm trying to do. You feel me? Okay, so after doing that, my theory about why people might think a Mini2 could make your gun overfunction, my theory is about recoil from thrust. That's what I think. Okay, because the Mini2 doesn't reduce recoil as much as an RC2. That's why I think they think that. So, that's where I am right now. I mean, I used the data and analysis in the Pew Science tests. I used my own live fire function testing with a shorter barrel 416. I used all that stuff to understand if what those two gentlemen were saying was like, is it like a higher pressure phenomenon? I don't know. I tried to figure it out. All signs point to the fact that Mini2 has slightly lower back pressure than an RC2. That's what we think. All signs point to the article analysis being consistent with reality. So that doesn't mean it's true for all cases. There might be something else going on. I don't know what, but I am open to understanding if there is someone that is experiencing something different. So please reach out if you have anything to add to this. I know many of you have already reached out telling me that, yeah, RC2 has higher back pressure, which it does for us. But if you have a contrary opinion or experience, do not be scared of like being wrong, because I'm not scared of being wrong, right? You shouldn't be either. Like, I just want to know. It's not like I put something in this article that was a guess. We just put measured data in it, and we talked about what the physics shows. So if we're missing something, it would be helpful to know. Okay? So that's all I'm saying. Okay? I'm willing to be wrong, and I would love to hear your thoughts on it. So I guess to close all this out, and I guess I typically do this in the primary technical analysis topic or technical discussion topic, but to close all this out, the Mini2 is a shorter RC2 with like 6 baffles instead of 11. It performs really well. It's a really short silencer. It's made well. It's a Surefire. It's pretty. It's cool. The one we tested is FDE. Those are always neat. You guys know I'm an RC2 fan. I always have been. Like, Surefire is not a client. Don't get it twisted. Like, oh my God, he's a shill. No, dude, Surefire doesn't. I think the RC2 series is one of the most influential and pivotal designs in rifle silencer history for the AR. I think that everyone should at least experience an RC2. We know the limitations. We know the pluses, we know the minuses of the system. I think that now having Mini2 data complementary to RC2 data is valuable. I think the entire pedigree benefits from it. I think the public benefits from it. And frankly, I know Surefire probably already knows all this stuff. It's their silencer, but I want to think that they're going to benefit from it too. Okay? I hope this helps everybody. We will be back next week with more data and analysis. I want to sincerely thank you for listening to this podcast. Thank you for all your support. Pew Science members are the reason why you even have the Surefire data and analysis. Mad props. Okay? I will talk with you folks again soon. All right, bye.